Hello, this is Mr. Cho here, and today I'll be sharing with you nutrition and transport in flowering plants, the first section. Let's look at this beautiful picture over here. You can actually see that the plants are actually growing towards the sunlight. Why is that the case? That's because plants need sunlight for photosynthesis, right? And so they're trying to maximize the amount of sunlight they are receiving. So let's talk about the leaf structures and their functions, right? So in this lesson, we need to talk about a dicotyledonous leaf. But what's a dicotyledonous leaf? It's actually a leaf that has two seed leaves, right? So the kind of leaves that you're actually more used to, you can see it looks like this, right? A dicotyledonous leaf. This is actually in contrast to some other plants like grass, where it's only one seed leaf. Okay, and we need to talk about the functions of the chloroplast, right, as well as where it's being distributed around the plant, the function of the stomata, and the mesophyll cells, and the vascular bundles. We also need to talk about how the carbon dioxide would reach the mesophyll cells in a leaf. Okay, so a leaf is sometimes called the factory of the world, because this is where photosynthesis occurs, right? So during photosynthesis, glucose is made, right? And then oxygen is also made. Oxygen is released, and this is why plants are so important for our daily life. They are releasing oxygen and they're making glucose that can be converted into other nutrients for us to use. Let's talk about the external features of a leaf. So here we see that there are actually four main features of a leaf, and let's start from the bottom. So this leaf stalk is attached to the stem, and this leaf stalk is important because it holds the leaf blade away from the stem so that it can be in an upright position and it can obtain enough light and air. Okay, in some leaves, we talked about just now, the monocots like grass and maize, they actually do not have a leaf stalk, and so the leaves will just have a much longer leaf blade instead. Now, the leaves are actually arranged in a regular pattern and they grow in opposite pairs, right? Or they can grow in some other arrangement, right? Basically, as long as they do not block one another from receiving sunlight, then the leaves are happy. So if we look at some examples here, we can see there's an even distribution, there's an odd, right? There's also bipinnate, and many different kind of leaves have different distribution. Okay, so as long as they are not blocking each other. Next, the leaf blade, this entire structure, is a very large and flat surface as compared to its volume. So you can see it's a large surface area to volume ratio. And this will allow it to maximize the amount of sunlight it can receive in order to maximize the rate of photosynthesis. Furthermore, the leaf blade is very thin. When it's very thin, it means that carbon dioxide can diffuse into the cells easily, and oxygen can diffuse out of the cells very easily too. It has a network of veins, and when I say network of veins, it refers to both the xylem and the phloem. The xylem will carry the water and mineral salts from the roots to the leaf blades, all the cells in the leaf blades. And the phloem will carry all these manufactured food, right, which is our glucose, which can then be later converted to sucrose or starch, etc. Right, it carries all this food from the cells to the other parts of the plant. So external features, very simple. Now let's talk about the internal structures of a leaf. What will we get if we cut a leaf in a transverse way like this? Let's start from the top. Okay, so the first layer over here is known as the upper epidermis, right? And this upper epidermis is made up of a single layer of closely packed cells. The upper epidermis is covered on the outside by this waxy and transparent cuticle. So let's break this down. First of all, upper epidermis. This upper epidermis does not have any chloroplast. Why? If you see inside the cell, right, there's no chloroplast at all. This is because it's really near to the sun, right? It's the first layer that receives the sunlight. And as you know, the sun can get really hot, right? It can get really hot. And so that might actually denature the enzymes that are found in the chloroplast. So therefore, these cells do not have any chloroplast. Secondly, we see that there's this yellow line, which is known as our waxy and transparent cuticle. This cuticle prevents evaporation, right? So there's a lot of water in the cell. You actually prevent the cells from losing water, and so that they can use that water for photosynthesis or to stay hydrated, right? So if they lose too much water, they might actually become flaccid and withered. Okay, it's also transparent. That will allow the sunlight to pass through the transparent layer and enter into the cells that are below it. Okay, so this is upper epidermis. Now let's move on to talk about the mesophyll cells. There are two groups or two tissues of mesophyll, right? And the first group is called the palisade mesophyll cells. Okay, and when I say one of them, I'm referring to the cell. When I say palisade mesophyll tissue, I'm referring to all of these, a group of cells together. Okay, so the mesophyll is known as the main site of photosynthesis, and out of which we have the upper side, which is the palisade mesophyll. Now, why is it called palisade? Now, in the past, people used to build fences, and so fences, they had another name, they call them as palisades. So when the person saw this tissue, it reminded him of the fence, so he called it as a palisade mesophyll cell. Now, in these palisade mesophyll cells, they contain numerous chloroplasts, right? In fact, it contains the most amount of chloroplasts out of all of these different types of cells over here. And therefore, we can say that majority of photosynthesis actually occurs at the palisade mesophyll tissue area. Okay, we'll come back to this network of veins later. Now let's talk about the spongy mesophyll cells. So these spongy mesophyll cells, they contain cells with a very irregular shape. They are like curved slightly in different directions. And because of this irregular shape, they create a lot of space in between them, right? We have these large intercellular air spaces amongst the loosely packed cells. So these cells, they also have chloroplasts, right? They can carry out photosynthesis, but they have fewer chloroplasts as compared to the palisade mesophyll tissue or cells. And these cells, right, just like all cells, in fact, they are all covered with a thin film of moisture. So as you can see, this blue line, thin film of moisture. This thin film of moisture actually allows gases to dissolve and diffuse into the cell. Without enough moisture, the gas, because it's a gas, right, it will just not be able to enter into the cell. So it must first dissolve into the moisture, then it can diffuse into the cell. So like carbon dioxide, right, dissolve into the moisture, then can diffuse in the cell. Same thing for oxygen, it has to dissolve into the water and diffuse out of the cell. Okay, so between these palisade mesophyll cells and the spongy mesophyll cells, we also have many rings, right, which are the vascular bundles. So these vascular bundles is this entire group of cells. And in the vascular bundles, we have the xylem that's found on the upper side, and then the phloem, which is found on the lower side. So how do you tell which is xylem and which is phloem based on their structure? Right, first of all, we can see that the xylem has much thicker walls, right, and it's hollow, right, and so these holes generally tend to be larger. It allows the water to, more water to be pulled from the roots all the way to the leaf. And for the phloem, you can actually see these sieve plates, right, these little dots, right, sieve plates. And so generally the phloem tends to be a little bit smaller as compared to the lumen of the xylem. Okay, so we have talked about the mesophyll. Now let's talk about the bottom layer over here. This is the lower epidermis. Now the lower epidermis is very similar to the upper epidermis, okay, except that it is found at the bottom. Okay, so most of the lower epidermal cells, they do not have any chloroplasts also, except for this group of cells over here, which are called the gut cells. Okay, we'll come to later. So same thing for the lower epidermis, they also have that cuticle, which will help to prevent evaporation and water loss from the epidermal cells. But here is the important part. We have the gut cells. The gut cells, they have chloroplasts, right? And so when they do photosynthesis, they will actually open up more, right? And then it will allow for more oxygen to diffuse out and more carbon dioxide to diffuse into the cells. Okay, now that hole in between the gut cells, this is what I call as the stoma, alright? Or if you want to refer to many of them, we can call them as the stomata. I wanted to show you this video, right, of the stomata that's actually moving. So plants, just like animals, right, like humans, they need to do gaseous exchange. But unlike humans, right, where we need oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide, plants actually do opposite. Now, so plants take in carbon dioxide, right, into the stoma, and they release oxygen. Okay, but that is only during photosynthesis. Remember, plants are also living things. They need to do aerobic respiration, and so when they are not doing photosynthesis, they are also respiring. In fact, they respire all the time, right? So whether they're doing photosynthesis or not, they are always respiring. Okay, so this stoma, yes, it opens and closes, right? But it will always have a small little gap, right? That will allow a little bit of gaseous exchange to happen at all times, whether it's nighttime, whether it's daytime. Okay, so I will pause this video for now and then let you digest a bit, and then I will continue on in the next video.